Not too long ago, I came across a clip of Joe Rogan talking about his thoughts that he had about Christianity, which I reviewed on this channel a few months ago. But more recently, a different clip of him talking about Christianity popped up in my feed, and after seeing that one, I think it's clear that Joe really doesn't appreciate Christianity.
You understand, mother, because the New Testament is utter horse. It's created by a bishop and a fucking emperor. That's a fact.
Now, after seeing this other clip, I'll be honest, I just couldn't resist. I knew that I found my next video topic. So let's get right into it, but let's start on a higher note. Let's start with what I believe was the most accurate point that he made in this video.
A lot of that God talk is a type of arrogance.
It is definitely a type of arrogance, and it's also a way that people establish the moral high ground.
Yeah.
They establish a dominant social position over you. And people love to do that. They love to do that with their pious attitude. What they're doing is by them accepting these religious tenets, they are somehow superior to you.
All right, so first off, when Joe starts talking about religious people using their religious views as a way to feel superior to others, he's 100% right about that. Some religious people come across as believing that because they accept some certain religious tenets, that they're somehow superior to others that don't. That much is true. But at the same time, I can see how someone could say the same thing about people like Joe. At least in the clips of him talking about Christianity, he comes across as believing that by him rejecting the religious tenets, that he's somehow superior to religious people. He comes across that way when he says stuff like,
if you just read the story about a guy who was magic, who could turn water into wine, who could heal people. What did he do with fish? Did he fucking give people fish or some shit? Make some fish? The whole thing's so stupid. Just stop and think how f***ing stupid that is. It's not thinking. Because if you're thinking, you can't accept it. Like, hit the brakes. Aren't you grown adults? Like, you guys you're into nonsense? So you're into nonsense. Is that what this is? Because you're showing nonsense.
The truth is that everyone, including those like Joe, we all have a tendency to look down on others and to feel superior to people who don't share our same views. So this tendency isn't necessarily unique to religion, but it is sometimes easier to spot it in religion. We all have a natural tendency to look down on others who have different beliefs than we do, which is why a lot of the time we tend to ridicule the things that we don't understand well if they're coming from people that we disagree with. For example, listen to some of the reasons that Joe gave in support of his view that Christianity is ridiculous.
The president of the United States can openly talk about God, right? And no one goes, "What is God? What are you saying? Like, what are you saying? Do you think Jesus came back from the dead? What do you think?" If you're thinking, you go, "Wait, what? He came back from the dead? Has anybody ever done that? 3 days? Came back from the dead." I don't think you can do that.
We actually already addressed the question of miracles and the resurrection in the last video that we did on Joe. If there were no reasons and evidence to believe that Jesus came back from the dead, then I would agree with his sentiment. But the truth is that there's plenty of good reasons for why Christians can rationally accept that Jesus was raised from the dead that Joe seems to not be aware of in these clips. I won't get into too much detail here, but we have historical facts ranging from the genuinely believed post-mortem appearances of Christ after his death, to the explosion of the church out of nowhere in the first century, to the conversions of James and Saul, and a host of other historical facts that we can base our beliefs on. I'll link some more sources down below, but leaving that aside for now, let's keep going.
Do you think someone walked on water? Do you believe in the literal translation? Are you an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy? Well, the New Testament. No, well, the New Testament was made by Constantine, who was a Roman emperor who wasn't even Christian. He didn't even believe it. He became a Christian on his deathbed. Like, that's when he became a Christian.
So I would agree with you about how ridiculous Christianity would be if this were true. Given that I understand him correctly, he's saying that a guy named Constantine made up the New Testament, and he didn't even believe in the New Testament that he made up until he converted to believing in it on his deathbed. Is he saying that Constantine invented a lie, but then somehow he converted to that lie? It's no wonder that he sees it as ridiculous, because that doesn't even make any sense. Even if we did believe that, it still doesn't make any sense to say that Constantine made the New Testament, because the New Testament has multiple authors in 27 different books. So I would guess that Joe is probably aware of this, and if that's the case, then what he must be referring to is either that Constantine established what books go into the New Testament, or that Constantine, when he called for the Council of Nicaea, somehow the Council of Nicaea was where they established the New Testament. But even if this was Joe's argument, neither Constantine nor the Council of Nicaea had anything to do with what books belonged in the Bible. So I honestly don't know where Joe's getting his information, but it seems that either he misspoke, or he's confused about this, or he bought into some weird conspiracy that he picked up online somewhere. But anyways, listen to what he says next.
You understand, motherfucker, what the difference is between the Old Testament and the New Testament? Because the New Testament is utter horse. It's created by a bishop and a fucking emperor. That's a fact. That's like established religious fact. Like, everyone knows where it came from. And not only that, it was written hundreds of years after the death of Jesus.
Okay, so think about this. If the New Testament were really written hundreds of years after the death of Jesus, then how is it that we actually have manuscript fragments from the early 2nd century? Not to mention that scholars will even date the last letter that was written in the New Testament, Revelation. They'll date that somewhere around 80 or 90 AD. And even then, that's remarkably early for how their culture transmitted information at that time. So even taking liberal dates, we're still within the 1st century. So I have no idea where Joe got this idea about them being written hundreds of years later. Now, honestly, we could go on for a while, but I think you get the point. Granted, this clip is a bit older, I believe, so I assume that he's probably learned about his errors since this was recorded. But the point that I wanted to make was how susceptible we all are to this way of thinking. I completely agree with what Joe said earlier about how some believers tend to feel superior to others because of their beliefs, and I would stand with Joe on this point. Those types of Christians tend to forget that they're saved by grace, which is a free gift, and that they couldn't earn their salvation by anything that they did. So if they couldn't earn it and they only accepted it, then how could they possibly feel superior to others simply because they have salvation? In reality, they shouldn't. And if anything, Christianity should actually make us more humble, not more arrogant. To get a better idea of what I mean when I say that, go ahead and check out this video where I talk about it in more detail. But the next time you find yourself ridiculing these things that you simply don't understand very well, what are you gonna say?
What do you mean?